What's up YouTube? Today we're going to take a look at LeetCode problem number 1355, activity participants, marked as medium. Let's get into it. Okay, so we have a table called friends and activities. Friends contains ID, name and activity for activities that certain friends are doing. Then activities just contains ID and name, which is kind of a lookup table for the name and ID of an activity. Our task is to write an SQL query to find the names of all the activities with neither maximum nor minimum number of participants. Return the result table in any order. Each activity in table activities is performed by any person in the table friends. The query result format is in the following. Our result should just be the activity name, no ID or whatsoever, and that's our task. Basically our task is just to return the activities that aren't the most popular or the least popular ones. So let's get into writing some code. Let's start by trying to find the most popular and the least popular activity. In this case, in our example input, we have host writing, which has only been done by one person, being Bob. Then we have singing, which has been done by 2 people, and eating, which has been done by 3 people. So host writing would be the least popular one with only 1 participant, and eating would be the most popular with 3 participants. So our output would be anything that's not 1 or 3, and in this case it would be singing because that's 2. In order to find the most popular and least popular activities, we're just gonna count up the number of rows for each of the activities, since every entry, every row in the friends table is someone doing that activity. So let's select activity, then count star to count all rows from our table friends, since that's the part where we have 1 entry for each person participating. And then we need to group by activity as well in order to just count everything per activity and not for the entire table. So let's see what this gives us. It's not that much yet, but it gives us the name of the activity and the number of people participating. So a cool trick to use here is to order by that count. Let's just copy that. And if we do that descendingly, the highest count should be at top, which is already the case here, but let's pretend it's not. And then if we use limit, we can just return first row of that output, which would be eating in a 3. And if we change up the ordering to make it ascendingly, so the lowest number comes first, and then if we take the first row, we should get the lowest number, which is the minimum number of people participating in an activity. Basically the least popular activity and the most popular activity. So we were able to get the entry for the most popular activity and least popular activity pretty easily. And now it's just a task of using that block of code smartly to get our activities that aren't either of these. So we have the values. Let's just return, remove activity here. That way we only get the number of the least popular activity or the most popular activity. And now we have to just use that as a filter and remove all activities that have that count. Speaking of having that count, having is actually the keyword we're going to use. So let's put that code block down there somewhere. And let's select activity from friends again. As you might realize, we haven't used the activities table yet, since that is just a lookup table with IDs and name. It doesn't really add anything to the information we have, since the activity, the name of the activity is also in the friends table as activity. So we're not going to use the second table activities here, just because we don't need it. So we're just selecting activity from friends, also going to group by activity. And then we're using having, which I just said. Having allows us to filter on aggregate functions, and the aggregate function we're trying to filter on here is count, because we also want to calculate count of how many people are participating in each activity, and then we want to filter on that count. And that's why we have to use having and not where. So that's what we're going to do right here. There might be another solution, but let's stick to this one first. I'm going to mention the other one at the end. So our count star again should be not the minimum and not the maximum, right? That's our task. Return or write an SQL query to find the names of all the activities with neither maximum nor minimum number of participants. And we have a code block that gives us the highest and or the most and least popular activities. So let's just put that in brackets and use that as filter. So our activity count shouldn't be the count of the least popular activity. That's what we established here, just by putting that into brackets and applying it to our having count filter. So let's see what this gives us first. It gives us eating and singing. Let's select the count here as well to visualize it a bit better. It gives us eating with a count of 3, and it gives us singing with a count of 2. It doesn't give us horse riding with a count of 1, since that is what we filter out in the having condition. Now we just need to filter out the other condition of not being the most popular activity, and we're going to filter out eating, which has the count of 3. That's the most popular one. So we're just going to add and here, copy that entire condition and just change it up slightly to change the ordering. So if we make that descendingly, this code block is going to give us the most popular activity, since we already did that at the start if you remember, but it's going to order the activity count with the highest on top, and if we limit that output by 1, it's going to give us the most popular activity. And now we're filtering out that as well. We just added it to the having condition using and then it's pretty much the same thing. We just changed up the ordering, and that gives us the right output. We just need to remember to remove our count again, since we should only output the name of the activity, no count. And if we run that code, that should be submitted. Perfect. That should be accepted. And if we submit that, that should be an accepted output as well. Now, I don't want to lie to you. When I first attempted this problem, I had a way longer solution using union to glue my minimum and maximum amount of participants together, my most and least popular activity, and I used where not in, which we could also do. As you can see, I used more subqueries. I also joined on activities, which we didn't need, but this solution works fine as well, and an interview would probably come up with something more similar to this, since you're going to assume you need to use both tables, because why would they give you two tables if you just had to use one of them? You might think about using union first because you didn't think about using having yet and just using and in there. But yeah, you don't always have to come up with perfect code, as long as you're able to walk through it. Say you're going to start, for example, by finding the most and least popular activity and then using that as a filter, and how you're going to use that. I don't think that's as important as explaining the solution and coming up with it. And there's always room to improve your solution, or the interviewer might ask, is there something you could use to filter on that count without using where? And then you're going to say, I could use having, I guess, and then change it up. So don't have to come up with that very optimized short solution. You could also use smaller and greater than here instead of not equal to, just as a side note, because if it's not the most popular activity and not the least popular activity, it has to be somewhere in between there, since we know the maximum and minimum. But as the question was stated, they said it should neither be the maximum nor the minimum. It didn't state it should be between there. I guess it's the same thing, but I wanted to be as closely to the task description as possible. Anyway, that's been it for that question. Hope you enjoyed it. I think it's a great one to use having creatively and filter on that count. It's also interesting to see that you're not required to use all tables here, and I think it's a great question. It has a lot of potential to optimize your code, make it shorter and pretty, as I did with my solution. So once again, I hope you enjoyed it. I have a bunch of videos on SQL solutions here on the channel. Just follow through one of the playlists, and also make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see these in your sub feed. Anyways, see you guys next time.